the whistle tone. Yo, okay. Hey everyone, welcome to the Queerie. So we're all in for a treat today because we have the amazing Monty Starr joining us. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today.
Bonjour.
Bonjour. The beret is on, ready to go.
Oui.
I actually bought a beret when I was in New Zealand like 6 months ago and I
That is
haven't
not the
worn
place
it
to wear a
yet.
beret.
Weird place to buy a beret.
I know,
Yeah.
it was at like a French market. I was like, this is kind of cute, but I haven't worn it, but I'm going to Paris in December.
Right.
But can I wear a beret in Paris or is that...
Yes.
No, I think that's the point.
Is it? Okay.
I'm going to Paris in January and I've told myself I will be wearing one the
Okay.
entire time.
I just didn't want people to be like, oh my God, this
I want to ride a
Australian bitch
bicycle
wearing
with a
beret.
baguette in my basket and a beret on. That's all.
Bonjour.
Yeah.
I like
I've
it.
been told that a beret is the equivalent to like beanies
Okay.
in winter for an
Right.
Oh, but they're like
it's just the hat that they
sure.
wear.
yeah,
Great.
no, it's cute. It's really
Very-
cute. I like it.
Very French, very international.
Well, fun fact actually, since they were talking about New Zealand, my heritage is from the French town outside of Christchurch. And my grandparents are French and they moved from Paris to that town. I have no idea what it's called.
Wow.
So then you're like, I bought a beret in New Zealand. I was like, oh yeah.
Yeah,
there
makes
is
sense.
French
I mean,
people.
makes sense. Yeah,
there is French people in New
Yeah.
Zealand.
There we
so-
go. Are you? So you like? Do you have any New Zealand in you, like caught in New Zealand or anything, or is it just that they came from Paris and then?
Well,
to
my
Australia?
biological father, he is Kiwi, like he was born in New
Yeah,
Zealand,
there
but
we
both
go.
his parents were French.
Right.
And then my mum was born in North Queensland, but both her parents were Yugoslavian.
Wow.
Yeah.
cool
so
mix.
I'm like sort of this weird Australian New Zealand immigrant mix.
Yeah,
So funky.
right. We know that you have a really fascinating story. We're super excited to hear more about it.
So we'll start how we always do with our episodes.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
what are your pronouns and what names do you go by and when?
My pronouns are he, they. Monty Starr is my name. In drag, well, I have a new sort of performer name. I don't want to call it a drag name because I'm eliminating the word drag and just going for more artiste. But it's Miss Starr
Star.
because it's a pun on being female as Miss Starr and just being Mr.
I
So,
like
you know.
that.
But there's already a Miss Tar in Brisbane, so I do want to acknowledge her because she's fabulous. And I'm not coming for her gig. But, you know, it works with Monty Starr.
Yeah, very cool. I love that.
And my pronouns in performing, sorry, I didn't get to that point, are they, them.
Perfect.
Right. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience growing up as a queer person?
It was awful.
To say the least.
Being a queer person was awful. My childhood wasn't. But I grew up around the Noosa hinterland. And lots of people usually go, oh, Noosa, lucky you. It wasn't. It's a coastal tradie town. And, you know, it was the 90s. So it's just people are really narrow-minded in sort of small towns because they're not exposed to diversity full stop. So, of course, because people aren't exposed to things and understand them, so usually they end up getting picked on. So, yeah, my whole schooling experience was turmoil and, yeah, it was a bit shitty. And I also grew up in a Christian household.
Yeah. Right.
Born again Christian, so very rulesy. So the topic of queer wasn't really brought up. But my sanctuaries, my parents still let me do things that I enjoyed. So I sewed, I made wearable art, and I danced from the age of 4. I was part of the Queensland Youth Ballet, the Australian Youth Ballet.
wow.
Queensland Dance Company.
That's awesome. What kind of, so ballet?
Yeah, heavily involved with ballet, contemporary. I ended
Awesome.
up doing my advanced diploma in performing arts.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, I have a diploma in musical theatre.
Look at us
So
go.
it's
And we're utilised.
we are doing
We're doing so well. You're doing well, sweetie.
That's cool that they let you still, you know, pursue arts and do all of that. It wasn't
Yeah.
like, you know, closed off to you.
I think one thing I really like about myself, and I don't know where it comes from, maybe it's celestial, but I've always kind of known who I am. I've got this sort of solidarity within myself, and I think my parents knew that as well. So it was just sort of like, Monty doesn't like fishing. He doesn't want to try any of these sports. he loves the sewing machine or he loves going to ballet, so we're just going to have to pay and let him do that
Yeah.
because there was no other choice. Otherwise, I would have just been a pain at the ass.
Yeah. Do you think they saw that as you were queer, or do you think they just kind of thought at the first you were like
just an
artistic?
artsy kid. Yeah.
I really love my parents, but when I was younger, I think they were a little bit more sheltered or simple-minded. So I think they told themselves that I wasn't gay, so they believed it. So I don't think that they thought I was gay, or maybe if came up, they were just sort of like, oh no, he's just eccentric. Even when I came out, it was a shock to them, and I was 19 and living with a partner at the time. So
Wow.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Almost like that generational thing that they had in their brain that just didn't let them go, oh yeah, he's actually queer.
it's like that whole like don't ask, don't tell.
Yeah.
It's like, well,
That's yeah.
yeah, and it is very generational. I mean, like my dad especially, he is one of those people that just sort of like won't brush on something because he doesn't understand it and he doesn't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is generational, isn't it?
Yeah.
So do you find you have the support of your parents now that you...
It's been really hard work.
Yeah.
But yes, I do. Well, more so my mum. Still working on my relationship with my dad. When I say my dad is actually my stepdad, but I call him dad. He raised me from 1 year old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, and then mum and dad had my brother. So yeah, dad's dad. And then biological father I mentioned before.
Yep.
I don't really have any contact with him, but dad is still that same sort of way, like doesn't really bring things up, or if he brings things up, it's very light, like I struggle with it because in my mind, when you love someone, you want to know.
Yes,
or
you want to know
wanna
about their
learn.
life. And
Yeah, unconditional love means that like you learn to understand things that other people like because you love them that much. And I feel like I do that. Like, I mean, I go deep sea fishing with my dad, or I do all sorts of stuff around the property, and I've sort of spent my life investing into my family's interests, but they don't do it back. And that's the struggle I've sort of had with them, even where they're like, I'm accepting of you being gay or even doing drag. It's still like, okay, we'll ask about it.
yeah, where's that next
Yeah.
level of support?
Yeah,
Acceptance
and
and
I
then
get that from my
support.
mum.
Yeah, good.
But it's been a long road, but I've endured it because as much as I say I've struggled with my queerness with my family, I haven't struggled being loved. And so I've held on to knowing that I've been loved for that end goal of being like, well, I'll push because you will accept me,
Yeah.
because you do love me.
Yeah.
It sounds a bit shitty that you even have to go to that effort, but I love my parents too, so I want to go to that effort.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think you probably are looking at it in the way it sounds like of that's what they've always known, and so maybe it's going to take them a while to get to the point where they can be super like out there supportive of it, but you'll give them the time to do that.
Absolutely. And I'm a shoe on the other foot type of person. They were born again Christians. They condition their mind
So
to knowing a
different.
certain thing. So it's hard to uncondition or unlearn things. I'm even learning that in life. Just growing up around the Noosa Shire means white bread. So I've sort of had to grow like misogynistic ways, and even like casual racism.
Yeah.
Huge problem in Australia.
Such a
Yeah.
big
But
problem.
like in Noosa, everyone's white, and like even the Indigenous people aren't present in the community on the Sunshine Coast. Well, they weren't with me growing up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've had to unlearn lots of things. So going back to what I was saying before, with my parents, they sort of had to like kind of unlearn things and that sort of stuff.
And
so
it's
I have
nice
to
that you're
be
giving them the chance to do that.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And I feel
not
like
that you have to, but it's great that you are.
no, not that you have to. And I'm one of those people where I understand with any kind of protest. I'm a educational protester. So like I love to write a sign and protest in the street and make some noise. But I'm one of those people where I'm like, if I actually say, hey, imagine if someone did this to you, or give a relative term, and then it makes people understand.
Makes it personal.
And then through kindness and education or relative terms, I'm actually giving someone an actual perspective, as opposed to like, oh, we can't say faggot anymore
Yeah.
because that's bad.
Yeah.
It's like, well, why is that bad?
Yeah.
Do they understand why?
Literally.
And then
yeah.
it'll make them
Yeah.
even more deeply think, of why it's offensive.
Yeah. So you've been involved in the queer entertainment scene for over 15 years. So how did you get into the scene and the type of performing genres that you've been a part of?
Well, dancing has been a huge part of my life. And yeah, I used to make wearable art and things in school. So I was always just sort of involved with fashion and being like John Galliano for Dior and Alexander McQueen. I used to see all that sort of stuff, and my art teachers used to show me all their like designs, and I used to just get really inspired. And I think I was like in grade 12, and I entered this wearable art contest in Yamundi. I think it was like the Australian Body Art Festival or something.
Oh, fun.
They had a wearable art section, and my model had to cancel, so I ended up modeling my outfit myself.
Yes.
And it was sort of in the time where now named Andrea Pavik, I think European Australian descent, Adelaide or Western Australia model, very androgynous, was modeling, and I was sort of like, well, I'm pretty, you know, like I could be that. Yeah. So I sort of got into drag on a whim because I was like, oh, I want to model my creations, and I saw drag queens going into nightclubs and things, and I was just sort of like, okay,
I could do that.
I could do that. Like I could become this sort of creation, but it was more an opportunity for me to be like fashiony and live out this sort of fantasy than it was that I liked drag.
Yeah.
I just saw people dressing femme. And then I just sort of started developing that. But this was like, I had a fake ID. So I was like, I was 17. It was like 2000, it was 2007 people.
Yeah.
And I remember like, it was probably like 2008 or 2009. I had been with my partner for a couple of years at this point, and someone came up to me and they're like, it's lucky that you have Scott, because no one's going to love you if you do drag. Drags are freaks. So this is the demographic of drag that I entered, like that drag queens weren't respected yet because we hadn't had Drag Race. So it wasn't this phenomenon.
Mainstream.
And that's definitely changed. But yeah, I essentially just sort of fell into drag because I'm just a creative Fruit Loop.
Yeah. Love it. Did you always kind of dress a bit like androgynous and like, you know, kind of gender fluid-y?
I don't really remember.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It just
it's
happened
so long
one
ago.
day, or?
I'm old, girl.
Yeah. You don't look it.
Well, makeup helps. I definitely know once I sort of turned 18, maybe through to like age 25, I was like on a warpath because my coming out was so awful, and where I came from, it was like my big fuck you to everyone, the way that I daily presented. I don't really present overly flamboyant anymore, or I definitely pick when I want to, like today.
Yeah.
But my day-to-day look. But I used to like wear wigs and beanies and skirts and I used to wear like bindies and elf ears and fairy wreaths. And just, yeah, like I just wanted to like be like, I'm really feminine, fuck you world. It was like my silent protest.
Yes.
Yeah.
Interesting.
What was the question? I totally drifted off.
Well, it was kind of how you got into
got into drag, right.
Drag and
But yeah, being a dancer, the main thing that got me onto a stage was being a dancer and a male in Australia, unless you are a man, you won't get work. And so I would constantly get to the final stages of auditions for cruise ships, musicals, all that sort of thing. And they'd be like, you're the best dancer in the room, but you just don't fit the bill, or you don't have the right look, or you're not man enough. Yeah. And all that rejection sort of end up deterring me away from dancing. So in a way, I saw drag gigs as dance gigs. Yeah. So for the better part of my early drag years, from maybe like 2008 to like 2011, I wouldn't even drink if I had a gig.
Yeah.
It'd be like, I'm a dancer.
I'm performing, I'm working.
Sending my invoice, getting my cash.
Yeah. So you kind of used it as a way to, use your dance skills and training.
Yeah. And I think that's almost what sort of separates me from a lot of drag queens now, is they get into drag because they see drag, where it's like, I saw drag as an avenue to be a dancer or an avenue to be a fashion designer. Yeah. And I still think that kind of translates now. I mean, often people go, I don't know if I even see you as a drag queen. You're something else. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know, maybe I am.
sort of going off of that, you were previously known as Jess Who.
Mm-hmm.
So do you want to tell us a little bit about who Jess was and your...
Jess who? Sorry. I needed to do the pun. I had to do it.
Louise never
Thank
gets
you
the puns.
Oh, wow.
She takes like
Well,
a
welcome
beat.
aboard.
thank
She got it
you.
straight
I'm
away.
getting there. I'm getting there. We're
Yeah,
good.
that was very fast. Normally it's after we finish recording, and then I
Then
explain
I'm
it,
like,
and she's
fuck,
like,
I'm going to sound
"Oh
dumb
my
on the
God."
podcast.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
But anyways, do you want to tell us a little bit about who Jess was and why you chose to transition sort of away from that?
Yeah. So, I don't know. Like, Jess is just an extension of me. I see drag as my art form. I'm innately creative, so I have to create to be happy. So my drag has reflected my journey as well. So there's periods where I'm happy and I'm androgynous and I'm being fashion forward, and there's periods where I'm subjecting to what people want because I need to pay bills and I'm completely unhappy in my life, and I had a little break and all that sort of stuff. But Jess essentially is just an extension of me. But I guess she's just an artistic showgirl, I guess. And the reason I sort of decided to step away was I did Fluffy Starlet at the beginning of the year as sort of my little comeback.
Yeah.
At the beginning, it was like, oh, I'm going to come back and reintroduce Jess Who in a more authentic way. Because when I stopped Jess Who, I had about a 2-year break and I sort of tentatively did drag for some charity events. So there was a whole scene of people that didn't really know who I was. And I was like, I'm going to reintroduce myself. One, I was reintroducing myself more authentically, just doing drag for me. But secondly, it was to join this group of drag that I hadn't experienced before. Because when I started drag, it was every queen for themselves. And even when I started at Fluffy, it was Lexi Page and Taylorette and Jersey. I can't remember Jersey's last name. They were sort of the queens at Fluffy. But it was really hard because the girls picked on me. I wasn't really welcome. And then the Sporties girls were the Sporties girls, the Beat girls were the Beat girls, the Wickham girls were the Wickham girls. It wasn't really shared around, and it was really catty. And so I sort of entered this world that was just sort of like, I'm just here to get a gig and have fun and be artistic and be myself. And so I guess I've always sort of had my defenses with drag queens, and in a way I don't have a lot of drag friends. And so I was kind of excited at the prospect of meeting all these girls and building a connection with this community that is now actually a community.
Yeah.
And what I come to realize was I'm not sure how welcome I was in the new scene. But the one thing that I always thought I never had that took Fluffy Starlet for me to realize was I never really thought that I had the love and respect from my friends and family. And it wasn't until they started coming every week and I'd give them a theme to dress in that matched my stage thing. And they were just showing up every week. And after Starlet 1, I had glandular fever the whole way through Starlet.
worst.
And I was up till like 3 o'clock sewing.
How did you do that? I had glandular and I couldn't even move.
I don't know, honestly. I had COVID twice at the beginning of the year. I had glandular fever.
God.
It was, I went through it. And I'm so proud of my journey on Starlet because I literally did everything myself.
Yeah, wow.
So, pretty cool. But once I finished Starlet, I was exhausted and I took a step back and I was like, you know what? I've modeled in drag. I have, advocated for, HIV, sexual health. I've, done advertisements. I've performed basically in like every club in Brisbane. I've worked full time as a drag queen. I was like, I actually just think that the support from my friends and family was the thing that made my cup full. And I was like, I think I can walk away from this now. And so I decided that Queen's Ball was going to be like my last night doing drag ever. And then I announced it to everyone. And I think that was maybe preemptive. And also maybe seeing if people cared that I was quitting.
What was that process like? Announcing
it, my take back was either people didn't believe me or they didn't care, which was a bit sad. But rebirthing my creativity, I don't really want to call myself a drag queen anymore because I'm looking beyond nightclubs and that kind of avenue. Not to say that I'm above it or anything like that. I just feel like my journey now is taking everything that I learned in drag and putting it into a different kind of artistry or something like that. So I really don't know what Miss Starr is yet.
That's exciting though.
It is exciting. So I've got ideas and concepts and a few kind of goals that I want to do, but I think it's just going to be a bit of a process. So that's my little Jess Who journey coming into Miss Starr. And essentially, like, you can never really quit drag because when you've had a career as long as 15 years and been involved with the scene as long as I was, and like I said, I'm innately creative, it doesn't really leave you. Drag is sort of in my blood. But I just want to channel drag in something that's a bit different and a little less commercial because commercialism kind of pisses me off a little bit.
I think that's fair. That we could go all the way into that, but that would be a long conversation.
So much conversation. We need episode 2.
Yes, we'll do that. We'll do a whole episode on just commercialism and capitalism.
All right. So something we wanted to discuss with you is the fact that you're HIV positive.
That's correct. Yes.
It's not really something we've ever spoken about on the pod at all, but we all thought it was a really important topic to talk about just because of the stigmas and myths that are all around that. So can you tell us a bit about your experience with
Absolutely. And thank you for bringing it up because, I really hope that what I have to say will help our listeners.
Yeah, thank you for wanting to talk about it.
that?
Yeah. So my HIV journey, well, because I was diagnosed in 2019. So by this stage we had PrEP and, a large sum of our community is educated on it. So I didn't experience too much backlash about my status. But essentially, I was in a really dark place in my life. I essentially was behaving in a way. I was smoking meth and having a lot of unprotected sex and hanging out with really dangerous people because honestly I had no self-worth and I was behaving, it was almost suicidal the way that I was behaving. I essentially wanted to die, so I was behaving in a way that would get me killed. Wow. And essentially that led to me getting HIV. It doesn't always happen that way. Some people can just have sex with the wrong person and get HIV. Sometimes people don't get tested and they have it and they don't know. But the way that I caught it was that way. And it took a couple of years for me to even process that. And then when I was diagnosed, I was diagnosed with syphilis, gonorrhea, and HIV.
Wow.
So you can imagine how diseased and dirty I felt. And I think that's the stigma that is behind it, that if you get HIV, you are a meth-smoking, diseased crackhead. And that's not the truth. And, that's a pretty shitty thing. So anyway, all that's sort of weighing on my shoulders. My diagnosis is awful too. So essentially I got diagnosed, started my processes for the STDs that can be fixed. That's fine. Happy to talk about them too. Can we stop stigmatizing sexual transmitted diseases?
Easy
it's awful.
to get
I'm
them.
like, girl, just
So
go to the chemist.
Absolutely.
$9.50. Clear it up. Make sure you tell
Absolutely.
people. Stop the spread. Move on.
Yeah, why would you not?
Yeah, so I started my process for that. But essentially, when you first get diagnosed, you have to do a blood resistance test. So essentially, they take about 8 to 10 vials of blood.
Wow.
And they do a resistance test on all different medications that essentially see what your body is either going to reject or take and work. So they took my blood, but it takes about 3 weeks for you to get an actual response. So I'm just getting rid of my STDs, but knowing I've got HIV and trying to process my new diagnosis.
Yeah.
Going to the doctor, we've lost your blood.
Oh no.
Where do you lose your...
Yeah.
Where is it?
And considering it's 2019, new diagnoses are pretty minimal. the fact that they lost my blood. So they had to retake my blood. And I was like, okay, well, I think at the time I was just sort of trying to be nice and just sort of trying to comprehend what was happening. But what I really needed was like, well, help me here. Like, give me, I need like, the place where, I don't want to name names, but the place where I did, they also had like mental health services and stuff. I was like,
I need that.
Can I have a therapist? Like, can someone help me here? Because I'm struggling.
Yeah.
So they took my blood again, and then it gets to 3 weeks and they're like, you're going to have to wait another week more. And I got to the point where I was like, I need to be on meds.
Yeah.
Because with meds, I knew that I could live a happy, healthy life.
Yeah.
I had friends with HIV. I was educated in that department. All I just knew was I needed to get on meds.
Yeah. And were you quite sick at this time as well? Like,
no, I wasn't. It was early. They diagnosed me pretty early stages. So HIV, for listeners out there who don't really
maybe
understand
explain it a bit,
yeah. HIV, human immunodeficiency virus. I think I said
Something
that
like
right. Yeah, it's big words. I'm just a pretty performer.
you're a medical expert.
And AIDS are the same thing. The way that it turns into AIDS is when your viral load it gets to a point where it then becomes detriment to your immune system.
Yeah.
And then because your immune system basically can't battle off a simple cold, then you end up dying. So people don't die of AIDS; they die of something else
Pneumonia
that
or
AIDS
cold.
has
I
caused.
see.
Yeah. And so I'm what we call on the streets U+. So it means positive undetectable. So it means that the viral load in my blood is 0, or it needs to be, I think, 100 or less for it to be untransmittable. So basically, like, I can go and have unprotected sex, just any of that sort of category, and not pass it on to anyone.
Okay. Yeah.
And then for people on PrEP as well, like, I mean, I think it's like 0.0001% chance of HIV being transmitted. So essentially, medication has stopped HIV in its tracks.
Yeah.
And then PrEP even more so, especially in the queer community.
That's pretty incredible. Like,
It is
the
incredible.
science, the progression of science
Absolutely.
in that time.
Is that also like the level of what was it, the virus
Viral load?
is that also determines like how sick you can get easily?
So when I was diagnosed, my viral load was about 13,000, and I was at a viral load of 0 within 3 weeks on meds.
Wow.
So 13,000 sounds like a big number, but it's really not. It's quite small. I have a friend whose diagnosis was 1 million.
Wow.
And it took 9 months to get to a viral load of 0.
So when the like AIDS epidemic happened, was that there was no medication or anything for HIV, and so it would like
Oh, the history
get
of AIDS. I
worse?
mean, we could do a whole episode on that.
Yeah.
But essentially what happened was no one knew how it was being passed around. So
It used to be called GRID, I believe, if I'm speaking correctly, which was gay-related immune disorder, because they thought that that's specifically where it came from.
and that's where the stigma comes from.
Yeah.
yeah. And, because as a queer community, I mean, sexually transmitted viruses and diseases get passed around with sexually active people. And I'm kind of proud that we are very sexually free.
Yeah.
I think it's awesome. But of course that means that, religious sources push us to that demographic of it being a gay disease. And we're seeing again with frickin' monkeypox. It's like, fuck off. Are we going through this again? I was like,
hell?
PTSD.
Yeah.
Actually.
So, yeah. What was the question?
Just your experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Really?
that's my diagnosis. When I first got diagnosed, I knew that I needed to process my diagnosis. I knew I wanted to be out about it. I've always kind of been very honest with my platform. I think it's pretty... I always get in a bit of disbelief when I even have a platform, because I'm sort of like, well, who am I? So if I'm going to have a platform, I've got to use it for good, right?
Yeah.
Even like me being here today, I wanted to talk about HIV because it's important. And I knew that I was always going to be honest about my status, but I needed time. So I confided in a group of 5 friends that are essentially like, this is what's happening, and you know, you guys are my support network. And they're like, yep, we're here for you. And one of those people, they told their partner, and their partner told their mum, and their mum is sort of intertwined with other drag queens in the scene. And then the way I knew was because she messaged me and asked how I was and if I was okay and if I need anything. And I was like, okay, if she's told someone, who else have they told?
This is not on my terms.
Yeah. And one really shitty thing about being a figure, I wouldn't call it fame or popular, it's definitely just a figure, in the queer scene is your business becomes everyone else's gossip.
Even if it's something as serious as that.
Yeah, but like even like who you sleep with, it's
Yeah.
high school. And because I had seen other people who were diagnosed and the type of gossip that they received in the locker room, so to speak, I knew that I needed to basically bang it on its head and gain that control of it,
foot or whatever.
and like keep my power.
Yeah.
So I essentially I spent about 2 weeks writing a poem about my status and writing how I was going to tell the world that I have HIV. I didn't want to sound like a victim, and I didn't want to sound like HIV was the end of me, because it's important to know that none of those things are a thing. You know, if you get HIV, you get HIV, no matter how you've gotten it. And if you've got HIV, it's not a death sentence, and you're going to be totally fine.
Yeah. It's not something to be ashamed of.
Like, everyone chill out. So I essentially came out about my status prematurely because I needed that power to be in my court without it becoming a point of gossip.
That's so brave.
And I also, thank you for saying it's brave. To me, I think it was self-defense.
Yeah, you were probably terrified because you're like,
because I mean, at this stage, I was taking a bit of a break from Jess. I wasn't drinking. I quit the gear, and I was trying to fix up my life a little bit, and then I got diagnosed with HIV, and I'm like, oh fuck,
fucking hell.
yeah.
I was going to ask how that timeline was of
Yeah.
like, you know, being not really in a great space to.
Yeah, so I was living with a
diagnosis.
housemate, and we just weren't working. They were fantastic, but it just wasn't working between us. My clinical depression was at an all-time low. Yeah. Like I said, I was behaving in a way that I just wanted to kill myself. And something had to give. And I don't even know what came over me. I think I just was like, okay, well, I could die or I could live. So I decided to live. And then, obviously stepped away from living in that place. And then I also was like, I'm going to take a break from drag. Best decision I ever made. And even though I got diagnosed with HIV, which is a big bummer, I got to connect with my friends in a different way, because not only when every time your friends come out with you, I'm doing a gig, so I'm working. I don't actually get to enjoy a night out with my friends. That was sort of the timeline. But yeah, like I was saying with like my coming out, the shitty thing is, we was talking about this just off camera and off microphone before, but like drag queens, yes, they have sort of a power and a figure in the queer community, but they also become these sort of like gossip channels. Like, people feel like they own us, and that our information and our private lives and how we live our lives, and even like what we do, or if we make a wrong move or anything like that, this becomes this sort of pinnacle of a conversation.
Right.
And I'm like, okay.
It's like reality TV, but it's not.
Yeah, but it
It's
my
my life. Yeah.
yeah. It's and so that's why I was like, I need to take this power back, because everyone's just going to bitch about me and create a narrative for me that
And
isn't
make
mine.
up things that aren't what the reality is.
Yeah.
Because you can tell your story and that's what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't really want to call myself popular, because I don't really think that people talked about me that much, but I know that people did. but yeah, I just wanted to gain that power back.
Yeah.
And that's just a really shitty reality for drag queens just in general, because that's my experience, is what we have to experience. Like the fact that I even had to think about getting my power back in a time that I hadn't even processed something that was going to impact the rest of my life. And it's last year I got gonorrhea, as you do. Oops. And then I stopped having sex for 6 months because I realized I hadn't processed my diagnosis because I was such in a rush of saving myself from the words of no one who knew me to even process my diagnosis. And like, it's important for people to listeners out there to understand that like I had to go through turmoil just to save myself.
Yeah.
From a stigma that should be eliminated now.
Yeah. Do you think that it is starting to get more eliminated, or it's still quite...
It's definitely getting more eliminated.
Yeah.
But I'm off the dating apps and boys and sex and stuff at the moment. Just I'm on a different warpath now with
Do you get a lot of like therapy and mental health treatment and stuff?
Yeah.
So good.
Therapist. Therapy works, people. Therapy
It's
works.
so good.
Why is it so fucking expensive?
Literally,
though? It's way
like,
too expensive.
yeah, it is. It's really sad that it's
And
not
hard to get
accessible.
in.
Yeah, that it's not accessible for everyone, which is really unfortunate.
But it's just so good.
But it is so good. It really is.
I don't understand. I feel like that's a massive stigma too. I mean, I feel like it is. But it's weird because it's just like physical health. Like it's exactly the
it's
same
like
thing
going
in
to the
my
Get
doctor.
help.
I go to the doctor
It's
for my
exactly
leg,
the
my
same
broken leg.
thing,
I go
yeah.
to the doctor for my broken brain.
Yeah.
It's the same
Absolutely.
thing.
Get help. Yeah, like I'm on a different warpath now.
Yeah.
But what led me to deleting Grindr, maybe like 3 weeks ago or something now, I got called an AIDS fucker. So as much as it's being eliminated, it's still around.
Wow.
And the problem we have with the internet is anonymity.
Yeah.
This sort of anonymous hate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can
Say
hide behind
whatever
a
they
screen
want.
and say, yeah.
And I was even thinking about things the other day in my little analytical mind I have. And I was thinking something Tater. There's a...
Andrew
Andrew Tate.
Yeah. Yes.
I was talking about it with a 14-year-old client. They and them pronouns, the coolest kid you've ever met in your life. And they were talking about how in an Australian school, there's a following of tater tots.
Yeah.
And I was sort of saying to them that it almost makes it worse because we have all this information to know that being homophobic or being misogynistic is bad, but yet people still choose to do it. So now we're at this point where we have all the information at our fingertips and we're still choosing to say things like that to people. So it's like, yes, the stigma is going and we know better, but we're still choosing to hate. And it's like, I can't decide what you do, but if you understand, you know, like even like my story, like the pain that I had to go through just to sort of say, hey guys, I've got HIV and I'm fine. Where what's happening behind closed doors is I've just saved myself from basically killing myself. I've just got diagnosed with HIV while I'm trying to get better. And then I'm trying to like save myself and also like not stigmatize myself and all that sort of stuff.
Navigate so many tricky waters.
Oh, it's hard, yeah. And like my warpath now is basically trying to fix all the self-worth that I didn't have.
Yeah. Do you think also like getting deep, but do you think Jess Who, there's like some bad memory, like things correlated to that because that was like a hard time in your life?
Absolutely.
And now it's like stepping out of that. And
well, while I was going through that period before I was diagnosed, and what led me to end up quitting was I sold my soul. Like Jess Who was supposed to be an extension of Monty and my creativity, and essentially I was just delivering what everyone wanted, was this sort of like ultra femme bikini wearing you know, fish queen as we called it then.
I think, now you just have to like put it to bed.
Yeah. And I think that's why I kind of was like, okay, well, I do kind of want to let go of drag a little bit because I feel a pressure on my shoulders to be a certain way as a drag queen, as opposed to Miss Starr is just going to be an extension of me completely. And just be more of an artist. And I don't really know if I'm going to be performing in nightclubs. I'm looking at auditioning for some shows again.
Like some musical theatre
Yeah,
shows.
or even doing some like live art and just
cool.
being a little bit like bit kooky.
Yeah.
The way that I'm describing Miss Starr in my mind before I even put my hands in is like a mixture between creative drag, contemporary art, and a hippie that goes to Woodford twice a year.
Yeah, okay. I like it. Yeah.
So
cool.
I just want to be like very raw and fluid and
Just do
you know,
you.
yeah,
If
wave
you had
my
to-
hairy armpits around.
Yeah. Look, if you had to do what everyone else has wanted to do for so long, then it's fucking time to just...
Yeah,
You
and
wanna
in a
exactly
way,
what you are.
letting go Jess was like freeing
Yeah,
for me
it would've
because it was like, okay, well, letting go of Jess, who eliminates all that expectation that I thought I had. I don't know if it was there. It might have just been my own expectation
But
of myself.
even
but
that is
Yeah.
like, weighs on you, your own expectations of what you should be doing.
Yeah.
When really it doesn't
Put so much
exist.
pressure on yourself to do what you want to do. Like,
Yeah. The last big question.
Oh, the last bit.
The very
Wow.
important question.
the very important one. What makes you most proud to be queer?
Oh, wow. Big question. Big responsibility. We're really unapologetic. That makes me really proud. I think we get lost in the heteronormative mindset. I see a lot of like queer, especially like cis white queer men. They'll be like, why do we have to parade sex? Why do we have to be shirtless? Why do we have to do this? I'm like, because sex was our protest. We were unapologetic about that in a time that everything was Catholic and sex was taboo and all this sort of stuff. And so sex was our protest. And, you know, drag queens are like this sort of like really animated, colourful. It was the loudest. Like drag queens were the loudest non-verbal protest that we could have, that sort of thing. So I think I'm just proud about being unapologetic and being ourselves. I think that's what makes me proud about being queer. Yeah. Fuck you, everyone else.
Fuck you all.
Everyone else.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Not a problem at all.
We really appreciate you opening up.
Yeah,
And,
sharing so much with us.
Oh, I love to get deep.
yeah, it's so fucking
In more
good.
ways than one.
Yeah. No, it's great. And I hope that it's like helped anyone listening
Yeah,
who
really-
might have gone
really
through
hope.
similar things. Or
Absolutely.
just, you know, maybe
Just
have a
even
stigma
just
in their
an
own
education
brain.
point
Absolutely.
of view, like just to know more about it.
It's really, really, we really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And like for any listeners out there, if you have any questions, my Instagram is Monty the Monstar, MONSTAR. Please shoot me a question. And if you think that any of my opinions, you know, could be educated, I could learn more. Please let me know too, because I'm always wanting to learn and grow.
I love that. That's
Yeah,
so good.
I never
Such a
really
mindset.
want to have a platform and think that what I say goes. I think, you know, I can learn too. And, you know, I might listen to this podcast in 3 years' time and go, shouldn't have said that. I should be more educated with
That's the
that.
thing, you change and grow. You
Yeah,
can't always know exactly
absolutely.
what's going on at all times.
Yeah,
We're only human.
yeah. But thank you for having me on this gorgeous day.
Thank you so much for coming.
No worries.
That was
Can we do a little
amazing.
cheer?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Oh, look, I've got just the
Yeah,
right
I
amount
got
left.
tiny bit left.
Stunning. Chin, 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 motherfucker.